What up, naughty steppers? It's Connor Whitmore here again with another review for you on the Nawtystep channel. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about the new EP from BVSSIC, released on Odio Records, Ignition. Real name Xavier Bellaire, BVSSIC is a 17-year-old producer from Nijmegen in the Netherlands, or Holland as we call it in these parts, who has shot to dubstep fame in 2018, with this already being his second EP release this year, all under the recently formed Odio Records label. And I also reviewed Tone Deaf when it came out, so BVSSIC is actually the first artist that I have done two full-length reviews on the Nawtystep channel. Can everyone spare a clap for Mr. Bellaire here? Amongst other things, in that first review I mentioned the lack of warm feeling in the EP, unforgiving dubstep bereft of musicality and really honing in on its heaviness. Glitchy seizure music with lots of drastic changes and a real emptiness being created by the sheer heartless nature of these sounds. And in listening to this latest project a few times over now, I would say he changes things up in several ways, keeping some aspects, playing around with others, and abandoning some altogether. He maintains the brutality of the Tone Deaf EP, yet expresses it through a much more reticent lens, having things not seem as in your face by toning it down a little. You can tell it's an EP from him because once again it's barren, it's heartless, it's bereft of warm feeling, yet not quite to the same extent. This is helped by a succession of comical cameos that add a level of surreality to his sound and open us up to a new side of his production entirely. The EP starts with some fuzzy sort of organ-sounding notes which are a tad strange but extremely helpful for guiding us in the direction that these songs are to take, at least in part. Having a say also in the midsection, which again is a strange detour for BVSSIC and the song to take, but I love appreciating it in the context of the EP overall. It's as we proceed into the following four tracks that we understand this is no anomaly or one-off, but a fixture within Ignition from beginning to end. The amusing circus-like build to Fustercluck, which should put you in a weird place again, but by now you're acclimatising yourself to the EP's cheerful aspect. Or the build to the third song, Flow Control, which takes from the video game part of the intro, re-engaging that theme with a jumpy, electric crescendo. The fourth track, Tension Seeker, takes a step back from the EP's comicality for the most part, but there is a slightly humorous feel to the winding toy part of the midsection. And that 15-second period of jovial banjo playing before the second drop of Fracture, there is just an undeniably funny element to this EP. More telling in that track in particular, however, is its dreamy essence, created first by those spacey opening trumpet notes to make it seem as if the track is floating. The strings of that opening sequence, the sloth-like breakbeat percussion in the build, the airy midsection, not to mention the very introspective ending vocal sample. This track stands as the best representation of the reticent tendencies that this EP has, because this feeling of detachment is certainly evident elsewhere. The mysteriously dark appeal to Tension Seeker with its hypnotic allure and ability to drag you further into the unknown. The flute notes ending the first track subdaptive, melting into the shimmering notes introducing the second. And the end of the first drop of Flow Control at 1 minute 36, where BVSSIC manipulates the vocal sample to make it literally seem like you are waking from a dream. Or, you know, trying to regain consciousness having just been knocked out. Same sort of thing, innit? But even in taking the comical and dreamy aspects into account, as I said earlier, Ignition is still fundamentally cold-blooded, possessing many truly blistering moments. The first drop of the EP in subdaptive is enough to suggest that BVSSIC is taking us back down that metallic, shiny route with his dubstep. Throwing you this way and that, with lots of different sounds coming together well. I particularly love those enveloping winding sounds as it proceeds. Which I imagine are what it would be like if you were to fly through a time portal, but hey, what the heck would I know about that? I like how the second drop is more emphatic too, with those moments of interjection, keeping it varied in its progression, the machine living through its malfunction. Elsewhere there's a variety to the dubstep here that I wouldn't say is unmatched for this particular style, but this stuff is definitely adventurous and forward-thinking, opportune and spontaneous. Fustercluck, I would say, is the most noticeably BVSSIC track here, twisted and contorted, plodding along as if it's being dragged along the surface. Proceeding to signal itself even more as his the second time around, more notes inserted, more energy, more pace, yet still with that stodgy appearance. Similarly muddy is Tension Seeker, which seems as if it's falling over itself as it progresses, with constant flickers of that renowned acidic laser sound from the teenager. The drop to flow control sticks out somewhat with its more jagged, stop-start approach, but it definitely still feels like you are wading through something in your way, especially on the second time around. This track being more noteworthy for its vocal samples, which capture the dementedness of it, working with the video game theme to make it seem like a haunted game of Tekken.
Welcome, Omega. It won't take much for me to deal with you. You're just a nuisance. I'll crush you!
But maybe the most compelling listen comes with the final track, Fracture, which very much represents a fracturing of BVSSIC's sound. The prime example in Ignition of BVSSIC adopting this distance with his production, yet still making it pack a real punch with one grunt after another of this intimate sound. Each note putting a dent in your soul, creating the emptiness that was such a recurrence throughout his Tone Deaf EP. Before finishing with that previously mentioned introspective vocal sample that essentially asks us how we overcome the fracturing of our very beings. Why do we keep wanting change even though we are the happiest we've ever been, this person asks, leaving on an appropriate cliffhanger, asking us to question ourselves. It's a provocative end to the EP. On that note, and something that I don't think can be ignored, the closing notes to several of the tracks here are almost equally poignant and well delivered. Working backwards, we have the scene-setting desolation outro of Flow Control with those really reflective piano notes. The croak noises at the end of Fustercluck tap into the main melody of that track really well, and are yet another reminder of the EP's comical gleam. Or the jovial flute that I discussed earlier at the end of Subdaptive, one of Ignition's most surreal moments, and that is saying something. But overall, I come out of this EP unable to believe how well it is put together, considering how old he is. The idea construction is so mature for someone of his age. These songs are quite simple in their structure and aren't as glaring as dubstep can be, but there's a lot going on in every frame of every song. The sound design is pretty mad. As with his previous EP, aside from his name, there is nothing basic about Ignition at all. Some of the ideas could be interpreted as such, but for me, the sound design blows that notion out of the water completely. The attention to detail on this EP is huge. Once again, it's subtle, but there is so much layering going on here. There's just a really strangely intriguing vibe to this project, with all the different types of sound and styles being brought together. And he always seems to spice things up by working with the original stuff and expanding on it slightly through changes in pace and added notes. It's about discovering all the little sounds that BVSSIC puts in and appreciating them for what they are, questioning their relevance and realising their importance. All working towards that gripping, visceral punchiness that is impossible to escape but just lets you know that it's his. There's a real might and presence to his sound. Even the wordplay here is evidence of the many little touches embellishing the general idea that is BVSSIC. I mean, Tension Seeker instead of Attention Seeker, that's just clever as fuck in my opinion, and so relevant for his music. And that's before I even get to Fustercluck. Lord! I don't think there's a song that quite grabs me like Devil's Right Hand Man does from his Tone Deaf EP, but overall this is a really solid follow-up, and an upgrade from 4 to 5 tracks, lest we forget. This EP and his style generally are very unique and will be appreciated more and more the more they are listened to. There are seemingly endless things to discover, many intricacies that I haven't touched on. Now, picking a favourite from this EP is difficult, but I think I would have to go with the final track, Fracture. I feel like this one is the most rounded, the grand opening, the vivid dubstep, the animated midsection, the intriguing ending. There's a lot to it. And in terms of recommendations, then I'm going to give you the 4 that I mentioned at the end of the Tone Deaf review. So Graphite, E-Craze, Dubloads, Parne Muir. But to finish, I would like to pose a question to you guys. what do you think is the relevance of this EP's title, Ignition? I'm interested to know what you think. Maybe even Xavier can help us out with this one. And so that is that for another review on the Nawtystep channel, this time of the new basic EP entitled Ignition, released on Odio Records. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. Be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts on Ignition. What did you guys make of it? Which track was your favourite? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hitting the notification bell along the way so you can be notified whenever I upload to the Nawtystep channel. Next to my head there should be some other Odio Records reviews on the channel, so if you enjoyed this one then be sure to check those out. And don't forget to like and follow Nawtystep across all social media if you haven't already. With all of that linked, including those 4 recommendations, in the description box down below. And lastly, and as ever, if it's naughty, then you know guys. So be sure as always to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see you all in the next one. Peace.